Okay, everyone, case building time is up. So very quickly, just to make sure that everyone's connection is working well, um, can I get some, okay, can I get some chat confirmation that the team is complete by dropping your speaking order, like what CO just did? Thank you, CO, by the way. And while waiting for the teams to do that, and I will assume that you're complete once you do that, judges roll call. Mai, are you here?
Yep, I'm
Okay.
here.
Okay, Mai, thank you. Kalmar.
Yep, here.
Okay. Kaupi, I can see you. Leslie, Kajes.
Here.
Okay. All the judges are here. COOOG. Okay, we're just waiting for CG to drop in their speaking order. Before we start, several reminders as usual. First, please time yourself. I will also be timing, and I will be putting timestamps in the chat for the first 6, 7, 7:20. Secondly, rules for equity and disconnection apply. So please be mindful because we're being live streamed. Remember what the CAP has stated during the announcement. CG. Okay. Oh no, not yet. So yeah, that would be all. Hi, my name is Grace, by the way, Gracia from Sanata Dharma. I will be judging alongside Mai from Undip, Kak Omar, Kak Upi, and also Kak Jessica Usu. CG, are you here, by the way? I haven't seen you putting your speaking order in the chat.
Hi, on my way to type it. Thank you.
Oh, okay. At least there's already verbal confirmation that you're here. Okay, thank you, CG. Okay, then. Since we get it out of the way, without further ado, let's open the semifinal. Congratulations for all the 4 teams for reaching this far. We're going to debate under the motion. This House believes that it is within the interest of religion to implement the practice of Rumspringa. Without further ado, I call upon PM to open OG's case.
Is my voice audible?
Yep, you're audible and visible.
Okay. Gender pronouns he, him. POIs through unmuting yourself with. Oh, sorry. I threw my phone. I'm gonna take my phone for a while. Okay. Setting up my timer. And just to remind again, POI and mute. Okay. I'm going to start in 3, 2, 1. We believe that inherently Rumspringa opens you to the experiences that regardless if you don't have Rumspringa, you will be never exposed to. But the moment you are exposed the moment you are exposed to the to these experiences not through Rumspringa, you have an inherent feeling of guilt. You have an inherent feeling of uncomfortability, and this will result you to opting out of religion. This will result you into questioning the religion, and this is again against the inherent interest of religion proud to propose. So first of all, two pieces of setups before going out to the debate. What is the interest of religion? I have 2 points on the interest of religion. First of all, religion inherently wants you to explore. Religion incentivizes people to look out there, to explore the world, to meet with people, and to experience religion throughout their whole life. So the idea of Rumspringa inherently in itself fulfills the idea of inherent religion that incentivizes you to explore outside the world, across the boundaries of religions, in order for you to be able to understand people outside the religion, in order for you to be able to appreciate the religion in itself more, because you understand that the world outside exists in the world first state that once you explore, you understand the beauty of your religion. But the second interest of religion is that religion interest exists under main interest exists under two folds, which is retaining followers and also increasing the quality of followers. I do believe that this is the biggest burden of the debate. The side of the house that will be able to answer to you which one will most likely increase the idea of retaining followers inside the religion and also increase the quality of followers of religions is the one that is going to win this debate. Okay, so going on to my arguments, first of all, why this is okay and important for religion to do Rumspringa. So I have 5 points on why this is okay and important for religion to do Rumspringa. First of all, I'm going to give you the setup on what the world looks like right now. If you are restricted, you are most likely to become a rebel. It is the same logic that if you ban prostitution, it will become an undercover situation and more prostitution will exist. This is also specifically existing and more important in cases where you see religious figures doing sexual act or things that are considered sins exactly because of this rhetoric on this taboo stuff. This proves to you that the restriction that exists in religion right now even affects the people higher up, such as preachers, such as people who still do sins even though they are the higher ups of religion. This shows you that the restriction itself does not function under a good metrics. Secondly, people are inherently curious. Opposition side of the house cannot say that once Rumspringa is not there, that suddenly you will be able to keep the purity of their followers, that without Rumspringa, people will not commit a single sin, that they won't be tempted to commit these sins. People are inherently curious of stuff. People will inherently be curious about things that are not allowed to be done. They will commit these things out of secrecy, in secrecy, and this is what will happen in the opposition side of the house. So the comparative of this debate is, in our side of the house, people will most likely commit these sins in these times of Rumspringa where the restrictions are most likely lifted. But in the opposition side of the house, they will still do these things, but undercover. They will do these things in shying, undercover from the religion itself. So then exactly because of this inherent curiosity and the sins performed in both sides of the house will cause people to become more uncomfortable in the opposition side of the house. People feel like there is always a 24/7 CCTV that is always looking at you. You cannot fuck up even once. Even if you do any type of sins, that the God will always be able to punish you. That even if there is things such as tobat, that after you do if you do the sins after tobat, God will still always punish you. You feel like you also feel guilt every time you do this. You feel like you are vulnerable. You are still human, but when you fall into this vulnerability, your God will punish you. This also increases the idea that religion is inherently unrelatable because they do not forgive worldly sins and don't have any understandings to all people who commit sins. But on the other side of the house, these things, these impulses for you to commit these sins exist inherently for every single human. So the fact that religion does not tolerate this at all, the fact that religion doesn't give you a chance to do this at all, makes religion very unrelatable and makes religion very exclusive. This increases the idea of people becoming agnostic, because the reason people become agnostic is because they are not comfortable inside the religion. The feeling of uncomfortability, the feeling that you are not accepted in the religion, the feeling that you are not able to relate with the religion increases the incentive for people to opt out of the religion, because people inherently will look for comfortability. So increasing the idea of acceptance, increasing the idea of relatability will uphold this idea of comfortability of people inside the religion in itself. So this is the type of Rumspringa. And also to explain, the Rumspringa that will be implemented in this side of the house will most likely be implemented to young adults or teenagers, because that is the time where they are meant to explore the world. This means the most specific and the most crucial times where teenagers are actually experiencing puberty, the moment where teenagers most likely will question the religion, is the time where we let them know that it is okay to be flawed, that it is okay to sin. The religion will still accept you. We give you 1 to 2 years to actually explore these sins and then come back to the religion understanding these sins. But before I go on to my benefit on why understanding these sins through Rumspringa will result into better quality of followers for religion, I'll take POI from CEO.
Yeah, in your side, the freedom will only be 1 or 2 years. Therefore, the rebellious people will still exist in your side and last till long time.
Yeah, well, that's still a better comparative idea, because in your side of the house, rebellious people will exist regardless. But our side of the house, the moment where it is most likely for people to be rebellious, which is their young teens or young adult sessions, we actually introduce them to the idea of Rumspringa, making them not question religion again, or lessen the incentive for people to question religion, because now they feel more accepted. They now feel that the religion validates them in the moment where they are most vulnerable. So under timing sensitive, we are very strategical, and on the idea of retention of followers, we are also very strategical. But I'm going to explain to you what is the exclusive manifestation of people actually experiencing these issues, experiencing these sins, experiencing these experiences, and why it will create better quality followers. Because the idea that religion right now is very exclusive. Religion sees that everyone who does sins, that everyone who does not belong to the religion is someone that will inherently go to hell. This results into the followers seeing that people who do free sex, seeing people who do abortion as someone that they cannot relate with inherently. But the fact that Rumspringa allows you to experience this stuff, allows you to experience sex, allows you to experience alcohol, you will now understand the reason why people do it, because you will understand the instant joy, the instant gratification, or things that happen once you fall into these worldly temptations. Understanding these worldly temptations results people to have a more rational mindset in order for people to be able to understand people outside them. This will inherently make the followers of the religion way more accepting of people outside, because they understand the temptations of the sins exist inherently for every single human and is normal, and everyone who does them still has a feeling of human inside them. This will make the religion way more accepting for people. This will make the religion have better quality of followers. Thus, if the religion is more accepting, if the religion is more relatable, this can make people relate with the religion more, inviting people outside from the religion, because people outside from the religion do not want to enter the religion because they see people inside the religion gatekeeping a lot of stuff. But once you increase the idea of relatability, once you make these people understand that, oh, the religion actually accepts you for who you are, the religion actually accepts your sins and will forgive you for your sins, this is the point where religion becomes better. This is why we answer the interest of religion. Vote for Erlangga.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for that speech. To open the case of opposition, I call upon Leader of Op. Leader of Op.
Now?
Oh yeah, we can hear you now.
Yes. Yes. Okay. If anyone wants to POI, please do so through the chat. I'm gonna be taking one from closing government for cross-party engagement. If nothing, I'm gonna take one from opening government. All right. All right, I'm gonna begin my speech. 3, 2, 1. The first thing that I would like to say is that most likely this debate is not going to be a comparative about how we actually garner back the rebellious individuals to under back to religion, for example, Islam, right? Because most likely if we already do not agree with the concept of religion itself and do not agree with God's teachings, for example, most likely even after Rumspringa, for example, most likely they will go back to their previous rebellious actions anyway. So most likely they will completely follow their God and follow the teachings, for example, Islam, right? Secondly, notice that Rumspringa is not forever Islam, right? That is to say that after 1 or 2 years, you will still have to go back and not actually do any kind of drugs, for example. You cannot do anything sinful, etc. So most likely, insofar as that is still true, you cannot justify that people will suddenly change their mind after they actually garner this particular Rumspringa after only 2 years, for example. That is completely uncomparative. What we think the comparison is here then is that we need to make sure that the people that still want to follow the religion does not get and fall into the cycle of sin. Exactly what's going to happen under opening government, and that is exactly the point where they will actually lose a lot of followers. So what do we want? We obviously want. Now this is second set up. We obviously want to garner the followers that we have right now, and we also want to maintain, but more importantly, we also want to make sure that the religion that we have right now is inconsistent with God teachings, because if it's not consistent, most likely it's going to create a split within the religion, and that's completely bad. I'm going to explain it later. But number 3, I just want to say that most likely the comparative under Al Sharia is the normal traditional sense of religion. It also say that if you opt into like Christianity, Catholicism, Islam, for example, most likely you have to follow the God's teaching no matter what. There is no like clause that to say that you can still do sin if there is certain conditions. For example, we do not want that. We need you to follow like the text 24/7, and then we're completely fine with that. Number 1, I'm going to tell you the first argument then why this particular inconsistency in the religion most likely will create a split that will lead to the destruction of religion itself. And second, we are actually going to tell you how you actually lose more followers, and your followers are going to be more rebellious under the side of government, right? Number 1, why do we think that the consistency matters in the particular religion itself, right? We think that religion is quite focused on consistency. That is to say that the reason as to why religion exists is to follow the word of God, for example, is to spread the word of God, for instance, and the religion is built upon the basis places that the word of God is absolute and every single member of the religion and the organized religion should follow the particular teaching, ladies and gentlemen. How do we think that this particular narrative actually backlashes the current narrative of God that exists? Number one, the current narrative of God in plenty of religion is to actually have responsibility, ladies and gentlemen. They also say that you need to be responsible, for example, paying tithes. You need to be responsible to make sure that you do not do sins, for example, and etc. Number two, it's usually about the consistency of giving guidance. As you say, that you need to have one particular line of interpretation in religion that is adopted by multiple scholars and multiple, pastors and imam, for example, in order for them to actually give a consistent reading on what God's will is about. And number three, it's obviously about implementing God's will. That's exactly what is in the text of the Quran or the Bible itself, for example. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly then the Rumpringa is actually going to backlash this. Why? Because number one, it actually backlashes the idea that you need to have responsibility and you need to have in control of your sins when you actually opt into religion. The point in which you actually have to say that, hey, in 1 or 2 years, for example, you have the response, you can actually have the right to actually do anything you want, for example, and you can do any kind of things that you want. Most likely that actually backlashes the particular idea of responsibility. But secondly, and more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, you actually backlashes the entire idea in the clause of the Bible and the Quran that there is no clause at all that you can actually do any kind of sin, for example. There is no actually passage in the Bible that says that you can actually do sin in certain circumstances, because the Bible and the Quran is usually absolute on the fact that you cannot do any sins at all, for example. So this is completely backlashing to the point of the religion itself. Why is this harmful then? Because notice that this debate is not in a preference or world debate. We are not actually creating a new world, for example. So most likely this particular mechanism and proposal must be implemented in the status quo. What is going to happen then? Insofar as people still believe in the past that this particular religion and incentive about following God's will to the fullest is still there, most likely it's going to split religion in the middle, right? There's going to be one side and the government side that wants to say that Rumpringa exists and it's still okay if you do sin for some reason. Obviously they cannot justify it because it's not there in the scripture in and of itself. And most likely there's also going to be another side that still is traditional, for example, and says that Rumpringa is actually not good and you cannot actually go against God's will, for example. Most likely this is bad because obviously different extreme interpretation mean that there's going to be a split. There's to say that abbots and bishops are going to disagree with one another, and most likely that the religion is not going to be as operating as smoothly. There's to say that you're going to lose followers because church is not operating, for example, because the people that run the church have different opinions, for example. It's also people not giving tithes, for example, because of the operational religion itself is actually quite busy debating on whether or not this particular policy is justifiable based on the particular Bible or the scripture in and of itself. So because of that, then you actually lose a lot of cohesion within the church that allows you to do all these organized things that is important, like church, etc., tithes, etc., in the right. But secondly, it's also harmful because of the principle, right? The principle of religion is to make sure that people know what the hell are they supposed to be doing on earth. We notice that we are just born as a baby, for example. We do not know what our purpose in life is, for example. And religion is the only one thing that gives us purpose in this lifeless world, that we do not have any direction, right? The point in which the religion actually gives you two contradicting options on what life is supposed to be and whether or not what sin is actually exists on in this Rumpringa. Most likely people are actually going to feel lost, right? It is actually the mixture that religion is actually not fulfilling its obligation to people to actually provide this particular sense of purpose to begin. So that's why it's important for us to maintain consistency. But before moving on to why most likely you will garner more rebellious followers under government, yes, CZ, you have anything?
Sure.
Okay.
If you want to make religion as a purpose, why do you think that during these 2 years the purpose will suddenly be gone, right? It's only 2 years anyway.
Exactly, right? Religion and scripture itself do not tell you, there is no clause in religion that tells you that you have a clause that you may be able to do sin for 2 years, for example. It's not existent in the Quran, it's not existent in the Bible, for example. So during those 2 years, you are actively in a position of God's will. You're actively in opposition in the scripture, for example, which is pretty clear in the text itself, right? So that's why the consistency of the religion is going to be gone, and that's enough for you to not gain any kind of consistency in the religion and of itself. You will create this and the debate as I said before in my argumentation. But number two, why do we actually garner more rebellious followers under the side of government, right? Notice there is an important reason as to why priests and abbots and imams, for example, always tell you to stay away from sin no matter the circumstance. The reason as to why this is the case is because humans are inherently short-term benefit bias. That is to say, they cannot see the long-term, for example. They only enjoy short-term delicacies and short-term luxuries. So for example, when you experience during those 2 years the feeling of drugs, for example, the feelings of unprotected sex or whatever, for example, most of these people will not be able to get away from these particular things because they see that, hey, a life outside of Christianity, life outside of Catholicism, where I do not have to pay tithes, for example, it seems like a pretty good life, right? I do not need to do all these things that religion is imposing me to do, for example, right? So at that point in time, most likely either A, when they actually go back into the religion, most likely they're going to say, I did sin in my Sumbringa year, for example, so it's okay if I do sin now. Or in the very worst case, they actually know that it's better for you to not live with religion, for example, because exactly there is so much restriction. So in that regard, you're either going to garner more rebellious followers, or you're actually going to actually lose followers. In comparison, under our side of the house, when you actually not allow them to actually touch sin at all, there is a point in which there is a veil of like denial for sin, for example, and they did not experience sin at all. So the only mechanism that they operate on a daily basis is the word of God alone. Because all those reasons, we are very proud to oppose the motion. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you all over that speech. To close the case of OG, I call upon the PN.
Can I be seen and heard?
Yeah, I can see and hear you.
Your eyes from reading yourself, I'll take one from CO. For the sake of course bench engagement. In Matthew 25, 14 to 30, Jesus told us that if we bury away the talent we have, which is given by Jesus, we'll be thrown into the darkness. That means even if they want to argue that there is nothing in the Bible that told you that you can have sex, that you can drink alcohol, there is still a clause that says that the human should still go into their fullest extension. That's why in churches, you are told that you should go into misa or you should go pelayanan, because that's a form of you wanting to be or wanting to show your talent to the fullest extent. Proud to propose 3 points of framing to kick out opening opposition. First, notice that there's a logical flaw in opening opposition. Because Fred tries to frame as if anything OG does isn't equal to any benefit or into deep understanding as what Kevin tries to talk to you. Judges, notice that if people are inherently that bad in the very first place, or if you are that rebellious and you hate the concept in the very first place, you don't understand why they're going to stay in opposition anyway, because then everyone is going to go to the religion, right? But note that this benefit of us understanding what actually goes behind every decision, even to the bad ones, where people are able to do so, is exclusive on opening government. Sure, the consequence may be we're going to lose followers, but at least the trade-off is that what we have is someone who stays with us because they understand what happens in every decisions you take, what Jesus actualized and whatnot. It is better than forcing them to stay with us just for the sake of threatening them of going to hell. Sure, at the end of the day, church is absolute in within what Bible says. But even if that is true, I think my opening line flex out that religion still wants you to explore and develop your potentials, right? But thirdly, I think this is a gaffier, right? You need to assume that Rumspringa is applicable in religion to make this debate charitable. And since the religion supports you, I don't think it is effective to question over and over, is it going to be feasible or not to begin with? I think it is charitable for all to simply say that government cannot talk about this because it just doesn't exist in Bible and whatnot, right? 2 points rebuttals to opening opposition. Firstly, I think if you're not able to disprove that broadly, temptation exists for everyone, your fear of people entering the devil's circle of committing sin still has the same likelihood anyway, right? But what's further even more detrimental in opening opposition? We explained to you that restrictions and curiosity is the reason that people end up in the most irrational decision ever, right? That is to say, people may do things because they don't understand about it, and that's why this understanding exists on 1 or 2 years in which then you are in the period of Rumspringa, right? Explanation of PM about curiosity that exists when the restriction exists explains the likelihood of your followers doing even a more detrimental things to begin with, right? But second, sure, maybe they want to say, oh, it's only 1 to 2 years, you're going to go back to your sins again, right? We concede that some people will actually fall into the devil's circle. But the benefit of possibility of people understanding the sins more and further embrace the religion also exists. That means you don't only understand why you did certain sins or why certain sins are deemed bad by Jesus, for example, as to why you just, for example, Jesus always used metaphors in Bibles, right? They say that he said that you cannot just throw rocks into women if you are someone who has never done sins and whatnot. So there's a more deeper understanding as to why you are able to have relatability within this religion. At least some people who are attempted to do these sins is going to come back because they don't feel the pressure, the 24/7 CCTV point that Kevin has brought to you. They don't feel the guiltiness under opening opposition, right? Furthermore, I think the deeper learning doesn't exist on the other side of the house, because once you do that thing, you will just come out of it because you feel a sudden urge of guilty. There's a threat of you. You feel very scared that you're going to hell. Therefore, instead of actually examining why people drink or why you like to drink or what's your limit, you will just opt out from that and try to fall back and run, right? Comparatively, under your side of the house, people who are tempted will keep doing this anyway, but all of them will still feel uncomfortable and guilty and reduce the probability of people sticking with religion, right? But furthermore, I just want to respond on this Fred's point, because he told you things about like, oh, you're distracting the religion itself, but not just the idea of absolutely of God, and this is going to create fragmentation in within religion. First, fragmentation and different interpretations of religion exist regardless of this existing. That's why you see gereja Protestant, gereja churches that have a different understanding to the jeduk and whatnot, or even the conservative ones where they still sing even ayat-ayat in Alkitab, right? I don't understand why this is exclusively only by the 1 to 2 years process. But even if then that is true, we think that is incredibly important and good to begin with, because that means you have a deeper understanding and discourses in within understanding the religion that you're able to have, or even a deeper sense of connection with God that is exclusive of opening government in this debate, right? But then they try to further explain that you're going to lose followers. First, I think this doesn't make sense at all, and it's dismissive upon what Kevin had told you in the very first place. Because we told you, right, comfortability in within religion is the key why you keep in that. The reason as to why you would like to still go to church, for example, is because you are happy that you have a fellow friends in there who's going to also do pelayanan with you. The moment where you feel like you all what everything that you do is restricted, even though there's a natural urge for you to be horny, for example, because you're a teenager, but you are restricted to have to do so because of your religion. That's why you feel uncomfortable with it, and that's why you opt into questioning why God does this and that. That's why it's incredibly important, right? But I'm going to further engage, right? Say, CO wants to talk about how, oh well, after 1 to 2 years, you're still going to be rebellious anyway. 3 points why they cannot bring that argument up first. We simply think that the purpose of you exploring into 1 to 2 years of this experience is to not always be the best holy followers, but is to have a more rational decision to begin with, right? Now you understand why you should use condoms in sex, for example, or at least you understand how you were able to have a better relationship in within your dating experiences, because you have experienced zina or dating, which is not actually allowed in Quran, for example. And that's why Kevin's analysis about understanding why you do certain sins are really important and should not be thrown away in this debate. But second, it is also to understand the reason as to why people, for example, isn't as religious as you. That's why Kevin's emphasis about how you're going to be tolerant is really important, right? You understand why people steal because they have no other choices and not everyone is privileged. You understand why people have different religious perspective or 6 minutes or interpretations to begin with. But lastly, here's something up to has to engage with. Those 1 to 2 years is where you're able to learn about safe sex, about drinking alcohol, and what is your capacity, right? Kevin's notice is important because what you get are people who are way more impulsive in making decisions, people who do sexual offenses because their sexual urge has been restricted for years. Their whole decision is based on the restriction that happens in the opposition bench, right? So on opening government, we say that we kick out framing from opening opposition, saying that this simply isn't possible at all. But secondly, we give you a better understanding in within religion, relatability, and the fact that you're going to stay in us because comfortability exists is only applicable when you buy arguments from open government. Therefore, please let Erlangga go to grand finals.
Thank you, DPM, for the speech. To close the opening debate, I call upon DLO.
Hi, can I be heard?
Yes, you can be heard.
Great. Give me just a couple seconds. Right, POI through chat. Taking one from closing. Yeah, please tell me your extension so I can work with that. All right. Oh yeah, since this is also being live streamed, I really don't like everything I say is purely for the purpose of the debate. I really don't mean to generalize or make any offensive remarks. Just some trigger warning of some of the content that I might talk about in this speech. Opening government justifies religious leaders and priests sexually abusing church clerks during the years of Ramspringa, saying that this is okay and saying that they're not sinful, and even worse, they do it without remorse because they think it's justified. This is an a priori harm and a logically fucked up mentality to have. And the reason why we will advance to this year's grand final is because we will tell you why, as a civilized and dignified religion, we refuse all these premises. Three things in this speech. One, framing. Second, why we win on weighing of followers. Lastly, why we win on weighing of consistency. On framing, it's just unfair for Gov to say that everyone will be exposed to those ideas and those forms of sins anyway. That is a gross generalization insofar as no teams in the debate have the epistemic access to determine how someone will interact with their circumstances. People's circumstances are vastly different. If they're born in a conservative family, if they're raised in that kind of family, for example, they're also unlikely to interact with these ideas. But even if you don't buy that, we told you that if it's true that people will still interact with these sins, these are not comparative insofar as they will still opt into those sins anyway in either side. The difference is under opening opposition is better because A, they do it with remorse. They know after they do those particular sins, they actively try to fix that behavior by contributing more into the church, giving tithe or donation because they feel guilt. But B, it's an a priori illogical to expose individuals who inherently don't want to experience sin to be forced to experience all that anyway. Well, Fred told you exists then because what we tell you was that, this causes cognitive dissonance, for example. You don't know what is true and what is not. That is not the interest of the religion if you want to be follower at any point for opening government. The second thing I want to talk about is on followers, right? This also relates to certainty. I want to do some weighing here because we don't get any super strong engagement for opening government. Let's just weigh why this idea is really important. 4 reasons why this argument is going to take us to finals. The first reason is why this is important is because this is the basis and the foundation of a religion to empirically work insofar as for religious institutions need funding, for example, given from tithe or any other sort of offering, volunteers to run a sermon and stuff like that. Now, this might seem like an uncomparative way, yeah, but this is comparative because we question the importance of the rebels or people who the opening government tried to defend on saying that, yeah, you know what, it's fine if they do sin. We question what's the importance then because followers mean nothing. They will keep on making, such a confusion for the religious mentors on having to look after them, but they don't actively contribute to church anyway. They don't volunteer to do offering, for example, or give tithe, for example, because mainly that's just how they want to utilize religion under government side of the house. Even if they get followed on their best case, that is not important. The second reason why this is winning is because what we told you was that image will be extremely better under opening opposition. This perfectly challenges government case of followers as well, because what we think is image is very essential because that's the window of what other people view your religion. I think what happens under opening government then is that people get introduced with the idea of religion. People get exposed with Christianity through exposure to people who actively do drugs or sexual harassment or things like that, right? Insofar as people are likely to keep negative memory over the positive, this is going to be a gross misrepresentation of the religion, and people just say, you know what, it's fine because I'm doing my Ramspringa. People don't know what the hell is a Ramspringa. People generally associate them with saying that, you know what, religion is bad. I'm glad I'm not a part of that religion. So on image, we also win. The third reason why we win is that we told you why certainty is important. That is to say, the reason why religion exists is to provide guidance, and that's an absolute, like a priori benefit, and that has been giving everyone the reason to live. That is grossly misresponded for opening government. This means that fragmentation will exist because some people would agree, but at best case for opening government, some people will also disagree. People will constantly debate, causing cognitive dissonances, for example, causing followers of the religion to not necessarily understand what should they follow, what should they believe in, what do their God order them. How did Tata respond to this? Tata said that, you know what, fragmentation exists regardless. There is no reason to make it worse, right? I think in our side of the house, fragmentation exists in terms of mazhab, for example, Shia, mazhab, Sunni and Shia, for example, in Muslim, or charismatic Christian and Protestant Christian, for example. That's fine because they can coexist. In government side of the house, they have completely and radically different view of how they particularly view religion. So fragmentation is much worse under opening government. The reason why this weighing in, the final reason is that at best, the benefit of exploration from government exists in only one or 2 years. Plus, it's very, very unclear why there is an interest of religion to allow people to do drugs. The comparative is, I think, in their side of the house, the harm to the religion as a whole happens outside of this period. Because what we tell you is that image, reputations, and things like that, losing followers, that exists even outside of those 1 or 2 years limited period that opening government benefit at best operates. How do we win that here? What would you tell to prove this argument? We prove you 2 things. First, what we tell you is that religions already have the incentive to change according to time. This is also engaging to our idea of relatability. Religion already have the incentive to change. If you know about the concept of the halal slaughter, it used to be a Muslim doctrine on how to kill animal in a certain way. But now they discuss and agree with animal rights advocates that they will slaughter animals in a different way because that's the least painful method to slaughter them. It's like accepting and welcoming LGBT individuals, for example. So religion is naturally changing anyway. We don't think that's a problem that is urgent. But even when we do this, in the worst case scenario, we have to defend this. What we tell you was that religion is not supposed to be a place for right and responsibility. And it's true that religion needs to always work on providing rights to these rebels who don't actively contribute in any sort of their responsibility to the religion. We're perfectly more than happy to let these useless followers go under our side of the house. So we win on followers. The last thing I want to talk about consistency, I'm gonna ask CG for your extension. 3, 2, 1. No, opening, go.
The things people do in Rumspringa is based on personal temptation where they have full agency on what it is. If they are tempted to do sex, they will do so. If they are tempted to do alcohol, they will do so. The comparative temptation also exists in your side in every single person. So why won't people do this temptation in your side of the house?
Because they know what is right, because they know that Jesus forbids them from doing that. That gives good image for religion, and insofar as the motion is phrased beautifully that way by the ACORs, our argument wins. The last thing I want to talk about is consistency. 2 reasons why consistency is already winning in this round. The first thing I want to tell you is that consistency is pretty important, and that's why we stand for consistent teaching. Even if you don't buy our first contribution of followers, like we don't know why you wouldn't buy that, we still win because of consistency. I think the religion with massive followers but no clear value on their opening government looks like pagan religions of Greek mythology, for example, ranging all across Africa, but now they don't have any followers. A religion which has clear value but no massive followers, talk about Hinduism and Buddhism from the 7th century, for example, still exists under tools of consistency is key. The second reason why this is important is I think exactly what I said before. This ways against rebels, that is a trust of God case. We question why that's important under their side of the house. Consistency still wins. How do we justify consistency? The first thing I want to negate is government fake method of religion wanting to let people explore. Paul mentioned in the book of 1 Timothy that Timothy wasn't supposed to engage with takayul and old fairy tales that influences his faith. During the Exodus of the Israelis from Egypt, God appeared at Mount Sinai to give all the restriction that they ought not to have practice or touch at all. Tata mentioned a fake method of Jesus telling people to do everything on their full potential. That was a parable of talent, and someone who failed on that parable was still punished anyway, put to hell. Insofar this is true, we are much more consistent. How does consistency win us this round? Because what we tell you was that, the idea of consistency leads to things like people having certainty of what they think is particularly right, and the religion sustains because people know exactly the value, and people have the choice to, oh, you know what, this religion provides me this, and this religion provides me that. People have clear weighing of personal responsibility under our side of the house, and that is already winning insofar as we provide the interest of the religion to retain power and also to retain consistency to sustain until the end of time. We should advance.
Okay, thank you, DLO, for that speech. To open the closing debate, I call upon member of COF.
Sorry, Kak, can CEO go to the bathroom for a quick second?
Okay, anyone else that want to do so, please do it right now.
I want to go to the bathroom as well. I'll tell you when I'm back. I'm back.
Okay, Kaja suspect, CO, I don't think so.
I'm back.
Okay, CO is back. You can immediately start. Everyone is here already.
All right, cool. Just make sure is my voice completely audible and my face completely visible?
Yep. Visible, audible.
All right. If you can keep your eye, you can just unmute yourself. Probably take one from openings oppositions for cross-line engagements, but if they don't have any, sure for closings oppositions to go. Right, no specific gender pronouns, just call me by my names. Going to start my speech in 3, 2, oh wait, setting up personal timers, correct times, 1. Right, judges, couple of frames in closing opening breaks, and why do we say distinct ourselves with openings? 1, I think openings debate are deadlocked because the outcome of rebellious and also faithful or consistency are super uncertain. Just because you have 2 years of freedom, it does not guarantee that the whole value of religions will be gone and you will immediately want to have like really broken religions at the end of the day, right? And people automatically be unfaithful, for example. And I think that's the huge questions that happen in opening oppositions. And it's happened vice versa to opening governments saying that, you know, people will suddenly become not rebellious. I think it's also quite questionable, right? Number 2, I think in opening oppositions have quite tensions also, right, with their own argumentations. When they want to defend consistency, yet in the same time, they argue that religions have natural characteristics to change. We believe in closing government that we will be bold and we will prove to you why changes is actually needed and why Rumspringa will be the kickstart of changes and it's exclusive when you have Rumspringa, right? And why changes will not happen if you have no room of room of discussions within these 2 years of Rumspringa at the end of the day. Number 3, we believe that during Rumspringa, it's not like you will suddenly jump to simple act. You must think twice before you do sins. And it's not like you will do sins every single day during 2 years, right? This is the concept that opening missing, and we will prove to you why the process of this thinking method and why the thinking method within these 2 years is something that is so important, and that will be the identity of closing government. So what do we want and what will we do in closing government, right? We'll prove to you how does Rumspringa will construct the whole concept of sins and how does our religions look like after implementing Rumspringa, and of course why it will align with the interest of religions at the end of the day. It will be better because the prerequisite of open government argumentation regarding people feel relatable to sin, and apparently they want to compromise sinners, for example, can only be implemented better if you have closing government proposal. Therefore, we are so proud to propose, right? 2 things in my speech. Number 1, I'll talk how do we best to reconstruct the concept of sins and why Rumspringa is really important within these 2 years of experience, for example. Number 2, I will talk about what happens after implementing Rumspringa and why it's in line with the interests of religions anyway. First thing first, let's talk about how do we best reconstruct the concept of sins, right? Because you need to understand that the sin in status quo are super abstract. For too long, all we know about why we are not allowed to eat pork, for example, it's just because is it what is it, right? In Islam, for example. And the major problem of that is that we're absolutely prohibited to discuss about it. And we have no chances to talk about why this particular case is sinful, because you will always feel guilty after doing that, right? And this is why, and what are the outcome of this, right? 2 things. 1, your spiritual journey will be ruined because you don't have full understanding of this particular sin, for example. It's super abstract. But number 2, since you don't have any chance to discuss about it, you will feel as if there is something wrong with your religions, second guessing about your own belief, for example. And this is what really bad when you have status quo, right? So this is where
voice gone, or is it only me?
Check. Am I audible too?
You are.
I think audible. Only you, Deka.
Okay. It's only me. Yeah. Sorry. I paused it right at like 2 minutes. You can continue from after your impact.
Oh, after what? Sorry, Kak.
Your first impact on spiritual journey.
All right, sure. Just make sure it's like 2 minutes and 1 second to be exact.
2 minutes and like 55.
All right, noted. Okay, then it's going to continue in 3, 2, 1, right? What are the outcomes, right, of you don't be able to have any chance of questioning your religion? Number 1, your spiritual journey will ruin exactly because you have 0 chances of this particular to know about this particular sins, because it's super abstract to begin with. But number 2 is exactly because you will double, second guessing about your own religions. You feel as if there is something wrong with your particular religion, for example, because you have 0 chances of questioning it. It's prohibited and super taboo, for example, in K2 school. This is where the room of 2 years within Rumspringa is actually something that is important. So how do we characterize, right? How do we mechanize ourselves, right? Number one, let's characterize what people do during Rumspringa, right? It's not like you're going to do sinful act and having free sex like every single day for 2 years, but more likely we say in closing documents that you will more likely discuss about the concept of sins in itself. Why it's likely? 3 structural reasons. Number one, need to be noted that the one who do Rumspringa is not only one religion, like Abrahamic religions like Islam, for example, but it's more likely all religions, right? It's because we live in a world when this Rumspringa will be implemented in every single religions. So what happens then? Sharing value will exist because during 2 years you will discuss about your particular value with another religion, and it's not prohibited because it's lesser. The restrictions will be lessened during 2 years of Rumspringa, right? But second structural reasons of why it's likely, it will be triggered by curiosity, right? Exactly because for too long you have no chances of questioning about your own sin, for example. More likely you are curious towards why this particular sin actually constructed and whether it's something that is objectively true or not, or it's just only based on subjective interpretations of individual, right? Therefore, we claim the curiosity will make you so much productive and having these particular discussions during Rumspringa. But number 3, since they know it's only 2 years, they will more likely make sure that these 2 years of loosen up and loose restrictions will be as productive as possible because they want to have changes in the long run. So why do we say it's something that is beneficial, right? Number 1, exactly because what we want to have in closing document is the reconstructions of sins. Right now, how does it look like? Right now, the sin is not only to say that we cannot eat pork just because just because it is what it is, right? But rather we will have totally analysis towards why pork is actually prohibited, and if in fact it's not something that is harmful, there are open chances of you having like 0 prohibitions of pork at all, right? So what are the outcomes then, and why it's within the interest of religions, right? This is the second contributions. Number 1, the outcome is exactly better understanding for you within this particular sense because it's not abstract, it's something that you discuss during Rumspringa at the end of the day. Number 2, it's exactly something that will construct progressivity better. Right now, if you have proof during Rumspringa that this particular pork is actually not harmful, then you can say to your preacher, for example, there's something that is perfectly fine for you to do so. Or another context, right? For example, LGBT community, there is so much despised by particular religions. I think during Rumspringa, if you lessen the restrictions, for example, you can prove to them why it's something that's actually okay, right? So why do we say it's something that is likely to be manifested? 1, because these 2 years is actually something that is better comparatively when you have nothing at all in opening stage as a whole, right? So when you have no Rumspringa, these 2 years, you don't have any room of questions and you don't have any room of progressivity. And it's the reasons why so much religions they're so conservative, for example, and they have 0 rooms of changes. But number 2, why it's important is exactly because these particular people, number 1 is in regards of spiritual journey of individuals, for example, they will do better under the house. But number 2, it's much better because exactly the vulnerable actors is also people who have nothing and have no knowledge about why particular sin is actually sins, for example. Therefore, we can get those clarity in closing documents, right? Therefore, we claim that these characterizations will be much better and it's the prerequisite of changes. Therefore, we're so proud to open the case, to close the case in closing document, right? Thank you.
Thank you, a member of GOV, for that speech. I'm sorry for the technical inconvenience, and I ask for permission to turn off my cam. Now, continuing to open the case of the CO, I call upon member of FOP.
Check, I'm audible?
Yep, you're audible.
POI through chat, I will accept anyone, but I will prioritize opening government. Probably I will accept 1. No gender pronouns. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. What we gonna do in closing opposition? Several mechanization. 1, we oppose the using of Rumspringa in the religion. It means we will stick to the norms that exist in status quo instead of religion. When the religion always implements the practice of purity and sanity, when religion force and make sure that all of their followers should be detached and stay away from sin as far as possible. There will be no compromise and tolerance towards the people that do mistake. For example, when they still get labeled as sinner, we will prove why this is within the interest of religion. But 2, what is the interest of religion under CO? 3 things. 1, to make sure we have loyal followers that stay in our value and teaching. Two, to maintain absolute morality of the value that become the comparative advantage of the religion. I will prove that why this is beneficial for religion. Lastly, to maintain theological message that God always wants us to preserve. But lastly, where is the comparative in opposition? In their side, they will let their follower to have period of time to go out from their community and explore experience that they never used to it. You will allow them to do free sex or drink alcohol. But I think the missing framing and opening and to a certain extent closing government is how the implementation of Rumspringa will look like. I think in current status quo, you will get the right to do exploration outside of religion. It means you have capability and freedom to choose whether or not you want to do prohibition that exists before in your religion. This context is really important because you argue and analyze what kind of people that will use this right and freedom. We're talking about three people. One, people with shaky morality that's still confused with their belief that mainly opening government talking about, that still sometimes questioning whether or not the religion right now will lead them into right direction and path, for example, but remain silent because of external influence such as echo chamber or family existence. But two, people that inherit the religion from their parents and community, because the reason why religion always have followers is mainly from existence of forced consent of their followers towards their generation. They are the one that not consent to being Muslim, for example, but because of their parents are Muslim, they also being Muslim. I also gonna link back these people towards analysis as to why informed consent that both opening government and closing government to bring is not inherent virtue. But thirdly, we also talking about loyal followers, aka right wing, because they got forced to quote unquote experience right now in government, or at the very least engage and validate the action of sinner around them, because in the past what you will enforce to them is informed consent. So will prove why this is bad for religion. But I think opening debate is deadlocked because I don't understand why understanding the sinner is important, but moreover why this is likely. Because this debate doesn't happen in a vacuum. Because in OG, the existence of hell and heaven still exists. And if these people is that rebellious and not get comfortability at all, they will live in the very first place regardless of the method they will use. Because religion is inherently restricted anyway, because after the Rumspringa end, you still get forced to pure again and avoid sin. Meanwhile, in OO, I don't think absolutism argument is relevant. Because in current status quo, progressivity still exists. The fact that Pope accept LGBT, for example, the fact that there is allowance of gay marriage in the Protestant church, for example, it proves to you that their benefit about legitimacy and absolutism is not really significant. But fine, I think Justin win the top half because at least she shows the importance of being absolute compared to opening government. One extension, all rebuttal will intertwine. Why this is not within the interest of religion? Two big layers. One, this is makes loyal followers have existential crisis and questioning their decision. Directly tackle, understand sinner argument from opening government. The reason why people want to open into religion is because the classification and reward in afterlife. For example, the existence of hell and heaven, sinner and saint. So there will always be black and white inside of religion because the morality that we conduct is always the same from time to time. This is important because absolutism is the one that makes our followers feel special. We're not talking about legitimacy of God like what OO did. That's why all dogma always frame as relevant regardless the era, because religion leader want to make their follower believe that they will gain wisdom and reward when you are not follow the Western culture, or you are the chosen one by God because you have self-control that sinners don't have. What's the comparative right now in your side? What's happened after our loyal followers experience all the Rumspringa period in government? You will let them understand the circumstances of sinner, that they might be gay because this is lottery of birth, or you let them being sex worker because they are poor. They will think that in the end they are not special anymore because all the black and white morality that they believed before is wrong. That all sinners live around them is not inherently evil and rebel people like what religious leader always told to them before. That sometimes is something that inevitable in human nature. It means you will lose comparative advantage as a religion to make your followers feel special, so they want to stay because you keep labeling others strictly. But at worst, this is at the cost of making a religion become, like exclusive. We're fine with that. We want to make sure our right-wing followers stay because what's important is quality of the followers. Directly tackle closing government. Because we say as a religion, we have more responsibility to the religious followers because of three reasons. One, they are the one that dedicate the religion more, they donate more, they go to mosque more, they want to go to church every week, for example, compared to, for example, like LGBT or people that being moderate followers. But two, they are the one that vulnerable because they can only get fulfillment from religion. Because the fact that they stay in the religion, even if all secularism value exists, westernization exists, it means religion is the only self-fulfillment that they get as a followers. But thirdly, they're the one that gets stigmatization even from liberal people right now. We see a lot of like religion people that being minority in the West, for example, get oppressed. So it concludes that it's more important to keep the sanity of right-wing followers because they're the one that don't have choice at all. At best, if we want to talking about protection of LGBT, protection of women, they can go to Western value if they want to get fulfillment. I don't understand why this is your interest to protect them. Before that, sure, closing government. Opening.
I don't get why the feeling of holy exclusive on your side of the house, because if people just don't want to have sex, they will not have sex anyway. So you can still, so on the outside of the house, we can still preserve it anyway.
No, because in this period of time, you will break your echo chamber. That before you never interact with sex worker, for example, you will get forced to interact with them and understand their circumstances. That might be right, for example, that this is not because they are just hyper sex, so they want to become sex worker, like what my ustad told to me before, for example. So that exactly the informed consent that you give to them will make them questioning that I might be not the chosen one by God, for example. But two, this will breaking the echo chamber because you will let these people interact with value outside them. We're also talking about understanding Christian and Buddhist right now, because before this room Springa space exists, you can exchange value with them, because as Muslim we label them as sinner by not believing with Allah, for example. What is the consequences of this? You will give informed consent for your followers because they get exposed with your value, either from secular like science or even another religion. This is bad from the perspective of religion, because in advocacy internally, this will make our followers with shaky morality questioning and find morality that more sweet with them. This is really bad because it's counterproductive of all demagogy narrative that we send as religious leader. That for so long we always tell to our followers that people that not Muslim is evil, that don't have morality, etc. It means in just a dust, it's become harder to spread the narrative because your followers find that the truth is wrong. This is also making infiltration from under value become easier. This is answer why become isolationist is better. By the way, government can say that, oh, this is so evil, you can't spread this narrative. Three preemptive. One, that's already happening in status quo. You can literally go to Majelis Taklim near my kosan and find that they always vilify kafir. But second, religion is inherently competitive because they want to gather as much followers as possible to get more donation. But lastly, making echo chamber is important for the sense of togetherness. If you have strong solidarity, you can prevent all attack from another religion and even westernization and value from liberal proud to advance to grand final.
Okay, thank you, Member of for that speech. To close the government bench case, I call upon Govwit.
Hi. Can you give me a minute to reconstruct my argumentation and just to prepare myself, for example, like timekeeper and etc. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Don't forget to turn on your camera.
Hi. Am I visible right now? My camera.
You're
Oh.
visible.
Okay, thank you. Uh-oh. Okay. Yes, I will start my speech. In 3, 2, 1. Panels and adjudicators' major idea of the government is no longer relevant since protecting sinners to be tolerated or considered will not be automatically forgiven by strong believers, because you will only do that in 1 or 2 years, and when you go back, you'll be considered as sinful, right? The output will be contingent to CG analysis on the constructions of sins. My member comprehensively explained related to the possibility of the construction of sins, right? First thing first, Rob Sringa will create more open discussion about the relevancy of something which is categorized as sinful acts, right? Understand, not all 2 years duration they have during Rob Sringa will be used to commit sins every single day or every single second, right? These are realistic concepts happening in opening debate. CG believes that Rob Sringa period will be a huge opportunities for believers who are afraid to discuss and question about that. CG also believes that people who are in practicing Rob Sringa have inherent incentives to find out their construction of sins, because this will be entitled on them until the rest of their life if they keep believing those particular religion, right? Second, Rob Sringa will be the only room of time to have a freedom and chance to discuss about that. It is the only momentum when questioning religion is no longer sinful. Closing government will utilize this momentum to make a long-run structural changes. Third, the only chance to progressively move on, believers will will comprehensively construct the concept of sin. This is the ultimate benefit to reconstruct the sin. CG may result eating pork is no longer harm because we will have analysis about the counterfactual. We can argue that eating pork is not that harmful to our health. Since religions order us to not eat pork because it will endanger their health under mudorot concept, for example. When we can tell the moment we can tell the moment 2 years we experience eating pork and everything is fine, we can make more rational analysis with that experience. Now, moving on to what CEO have already explained to you. CEO want to keep the quality of believers, like appreciating their devotion, like they are afraid that we are invalidating their deep devotion, right? First thing first, truest believers in CEO will never care about what other people do. They just want to focus on what they believe. So irrespective, there is a discussion or debate about that value, those believers will keep doing what they believe at the end of the day, right? Second, moreover, what they have done will be validated by their by the way they're to get rewards from God by obeying what God said. So they will consider that God keeps giving the rewards, or at least they will not experience the uncertain feeling of committing the sins anyway, right? Now, what we have offered to you as Aussie government, first thing first, we have proposed that in our world, sin will be classified. What this implies? It implies that, for example, when in the past eating pork is going to be sinful, now it will be loosened up because there is a rational analysis on why pork is not that harmful. Second, we have established that most of the time in the religions, something that is considered halal or able to be eaten or consumed has the outputs of endangering lives or being harmful, right? Third is that interest of religion is the interest of religion, just like my member have already told you, is that they want to stay relevant to the fact that progressivity is allowed in the religion. Like, for example, Pope France is allowing gay marriage and also abortion that is allowed in Christian, for example. That's why they want to keep staying relevant, right? Moving on to what the OG have already explained to you, right? Now, they've explained two things, which is why it is okay to implement this kind of system, because it will create a sense of comfortability and relatability towards the believers, and second, they will decrease the potential of chance of losing followers, right? OG's argumentation will work if the sin is already classified, right? Just like my member have already explained to you on how pork can be seen as something that is not harmful if you process it carefully and hygienically, right? What does this mean? It means that we will be focusing on the outputs is harmful or not. Why OG's argumentation is not important? Because believers cannot feel or understand if the sin is that simple if they do not understand a deeper analysis on why something is sinful in the first place, right? That is why the opening government does not take place in this debate. Moving on to what the opening opposition. Opposition explained that, religion have to be consistent, because if not, they will create a sense of self-doubt within the believers and etc. Now, sure, let's say that scenario will have self-doubt in the believers and etc. because the religion is inconsistent at the end of the day. Because at the first thing is that religion said that, oh, it is haram, but the next thing that they said that, oh, because of the system, it will not be deemed as haram and etc. But we do think that this scenario will be unlikely. Why? First thing first, OO failed to realize that in our status quo, our world is much more progressive. What does this mean? It means when at early age of religion, people are still afraid to criticize religion because the wrath of God, for example, and etc. But now everyone can criticize Abrahamic religion, for example, like Abrahamic religion. Everyone pointing out the flaws of religion, for example, like on Twitter and etc. Second, what happened then? What happened is that these people will still have doubts or self-questioning on the religion and etc. Even when the religion is still being consistent at the end of the day, because they're still at the end of the day going to be exposed with this kind of questioning of morality on the religion's content in this era, on this, for example, on Twitter or etc. So at the end of the day, there's self-doubt or self-questioning on the religion will still exist even with opening opposition's proposal, right? Second, we do think that OO is circling around in the contradiction mindset. What happened here? First speaker said that, oh, you know what? People will self-doubt because the religion is not consistent, for example, and etc. But then the second speaker said that, oh, you know what? Religion will organically change and adapt by itself from time to time, which create contradiction where first they said that religion should not be inconsistent, but the next they said that religion can also change. Doesn't that mean religion is also inconsistent in their part of in their side of the house? Now, let's move on what the closing opposition that which I have already explained to you. First, they said that they want to maintain their beliefs quality and make people even more devoted. We claim it is not important because people who are devoted will still consistently devoted even we have Ram Sringa, for example. Why? Because in the first place, these believers who is devoted will still maintaining their quality at the end of the day. Why? Because as a devoted believers, they already know and comfortable with their own religion. Thus, there is no urgency to have instability in their quality on their belief of their religion, just like what the closing opposition proposed, right? That's why the closing opposition still managed to bring irrelevancy in this debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Government Whip. To close the opposition's case and this debate as a whole, I call upon Op Whip.
Hello, am I audible and visible?
Yep, you're both.
Splendid. I'm gonna start my speech. If you want to be quiet, please do it, please. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Two issues in my speech. First, I'll talk about government side of the house, about exploration and spiritual journey that leads to understanding. I think there's a massive backlash in closing government, right? Because they say that people will be more progressive in their side, but at the same time, religious people do not care about the external forces, right? But the prerequisite of the progressivity in their side of the house to care about the external forces from the very first place. Therefore, we question that. But two other responses to government side of the house. One, they say the government side say they want debate, they want exploration, and this is within the interest of religion, right? But we question, right? Disclaimer, trigger warning. We question why minority protection and progressivity is actually important, because these religious people and the religion institution are the beneficiary of the oppression of the minority in itself. And my earlier speaker analysis about the interest of the religious individual actually matters, because we told you that the oppression of the minority makes them have a common enemy, and therefore unify them into having a sense of togetherness within the religion, right? This is why we question why it is important, especially when this debate is within the interest of the religion. But the second question is exploration of virtue, right? Who are the people we are talking about? This is why my earlier speaker analysis matter. We are not talking about a rebellious individual that opening governments want to talk about, because these people will do sins anyway undercover, like outside of these 2 years, for example. Therefore, this is not the most important thing. But we are talking about one, gray area individuals who have question and doubt upon the belief. But secondly, we are also talking about loyal followers who have the sense of existentialism and identity from the feeling of specialness of this and the superiority that they are the chosen one by God and other people is wrong, for example. Two analysis. First, let's talk about the gray area individual. We told you that these people in opening governments will be most likely to question their belief and the moral standard, and will likely to opt out from the religion because of two structural reasons, or even if they still in the religion not loyal. Two reasons. Firstly, we analyzed to you that sin is addicting. How does this look like? Drugs and alcohol is inherently have a substance to make you addicted, and sex makes you have an emitted oxytocin that makes your prefrontal cortex actually changes the decision making. But secondly, sin also is a lifestyle, right? In the moment you are 2 years outside, you make the community outside the church institution, right? You are making friends inside the nightclub and so on and so forth. Therefore, you will have more proximity and attachment to that respective community, and therefore there is more likely to be a recidivist and opt out in their side of the house. But secondly, and the most importantly, we are talking about the right-wing conservative. This is important because these are the people who have the most contribution to our religion. The fact that these are the people who fund the religion the most, they promote religion the most, and never question the religion, and always become the beneficiary of the religious institution, right? There are two things that I'm going to talk about. One, these right-wing conservative will have an existential crisis in the government side of the house. Why? Because the satisfaction of the religion does not come from the inherent, like the arbitrary factor, but rather the feeling of specialness, the feeling that you are chosen by God, the feeling of superiority that the God chose you, that you are the one who is being chosen by Jesus to follow his order and his willingness. This looks like salvation can only be achieved when you are following Jesus, or deterministic Calvinists who make salvation only from those who become chosen, who are chosen by God. This is, and also the concept of divine punishment that all things agree exists, right, is only justifiable if there is an absolute evil. Because if there is no absolute evil, and like sins are becoming like circumstances and so on and so forth, the concept of hell, heaven, and divine punishment and reward will not fly, right? This is why we flip the argument of the opening government as to understanding and exploration is inherently bad, because you do not feel superior get superior anymore. You don't feel the satisfaction of the religion anymore. But why this is important, right? This is important because these people have no other alternative to exercise their identity, right? The only satisfaction that came from them are the devotion towards God, and so on and so forth, right? Because the alternative mechanism, alternative standards such as capitalistic standard in which you have to be rich or you have to be handsome, for example, is oftentimes not reachable by the vast majority of individuals. This is why these people will have an existential crisis. But secondly, talking about the echo chamber, we believe that it's important to keep them inside the echo chamber, right? We want them to keep the bigoted idea of them because it creates a sense of togetherness, that you share the common enemy, that you follow a specific God without no question because you believe in him, like that they have the absolute value. But thirdly, Tara analyzes to you that the religion is being competitive to one another, right? And we believe that religion has always been mutually exclusive. For example, God have to be omnipotent, and if you follow like a God, you cannot follow the B God, for example. This is why the prerequisite of this is the vilification of a certain actor that considered as evil. So even if so we told you that retention can only exist in our side of the house, but even if the judge, for whatever reason, considered that retention is symmetrical, we told you that the satisfaction and the existentialism within the religious community is the most important thing to discuss about, the most certain, and also have the biggest benefit. And they're more vulnerable because of no other option. But before going further, Kevin, cool.
Temptation breaking the echo chamber and people outside the echo chamber will suddenly become demons is the crux of your case. But suddenly, when the same temptation exists in your side of the house, people will have this strong will and never break the echo chamber. Under this logic, sinners won't exist at all, but surprise, surprise, every single one of us are sinners. So explain what echo chamber exists in your side and why they won't break it.
We don't really care whether these people actually do the sin, but the feeling of specialness that came from the vilification of people who do sins, even if you do the sin, gives you a sense of satisfaction that you are the chosen one by God, right? This is the interest of the religion. But secondly, let's deal with opening opposition and why we deserve first. They told us about the consistency argument, and it gives you a certain guidance. I think this is backlash, right? Because LO wants to talk about absolutism, but the LO wants the religious changes to be more productive. I think CG is correct when pointing this out, but we bite the bullet to say why absolutism and protectionism is good. My problem with the argument coming from opening opposition is why church institutions have no ability to make a new interpretation in. This is correctly pointed out by the opening government, the fact that the Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe Jesus as a God. We analyze to you the reason people opt into religion because they do not want to question things. They feel the safety the moment they certainly know what is morally righteous. The reason as to why they do not opting into the universal morality or the Western liberal standard, for example, because it's full of question and doubt. You question whether or not the value that you choose is right, for example. This is why we believe that you cannot make this an interpretation, this mechanized OO, by the way, because it violates the inherent purpose of religion. But even if interpretation exists, this reduces the safe space upon the right-wing conservative in itself. But why moral absolutism will not exist in government side of the house? One, the fact that sin is allowed in a certain circumstances makes you question the inherent virtue of the morality. But secondly, understanding and exploration is in OG. Like for it is bad because you will think that maybe drinking and eating pork is not that bad, and you will start to question: is my religion righteous to ban this, for example? Especially many pleasure based on sins is not logically matters, right? This is why retention will be worse in their side of the house because you violate the rise of the artery of the religion. But secondly, responding to CG, sin will always be abstract and be based on the arbitrary divine value. What's important is the sense of togetherness from the right-wing community. We are very proud to win this debate.
Okay, thank you, Opposition Whip, for that speech, and thank you everyone for the debate. For now, all the debaters can go back to the hall and wait for the results. For the judges, let's wait for the